So right now we're pretty happy with what we're doing, or I'm pretty happy with the sound here. Again, comparing it to the unprocessed version. So, down over to the mono bus. I like to add a little bit of a saturator or a harmonic exciter. Ableton has this in the form of a saturator. This brings up the harmonics of the content that you're bringing into, and this really helps the low end come through smaller speakers because you're adding the higher harmonics of the low end, and so even though your speaker can't produce that exact frequency, if it can't produce the fundamental, you'll hear the harmonics, and psychoacoustically your brain will interpret that as the subs being there, or that's that harmonic being there. Excuse me, as that fundamental being there. So bring the width down. We'll keep that. All right. It's also important to keep your levels constant when you're A-Bing things, because otherwise psychoacoustically you're just going to gravitate towards the louder thing, saying the louder thing sounds better. See here, this sounds louder, so we automatically think it's better. So to do that, or to deal with that, I'm just going to put a limiter on here and bring up the level. So it almost matches this guy. That's a bit much. A little bit more in that sub bass area. There we go. So you can hear in the unprocessed version, the kick really pops out. It's a little bit too much dynamics on the kick there, and by doing the multi-band compression on the mono bus, we kind of helped grab that and make it all sit together in the mix. Also the stereo field, I want to bring it up just a little bit, make it sound a little bit brighter and wider. This is really going to make those subwoofers sing when you're playing this out. And finally, I like to add just a little bit of EQ to the final full processed mix before we hit the compressor, or the limiter, excuse me. Again, a little roll off here. And then another roll off on the high end in the case of Saturator. Happen to bring in some, again, frequency content that goes above the Nyquist. We don't want that aliasing back down. I'm gonna bring in just the hi-hats a tad bit here. Set this to here. Always good, and when you're in Ableton or any program, make sure that you're not clipping right here as you go between your signal chain or through your signal chain. Make sure you're not clipping anything. our unprocessed version and our processed version. I'm going to add another notch filter here. Real tight cue just to bring out the punch and the kick. Whoops. Go back to the sky. And the final step is limiting, which comes back to the whole thing about the loudness wars. And a lot of nightclubs already have limiters and all that placed, so most DJs are already running it into a limiter, and it's going to be completely squashed by the time you hear it in a nightclub. But you do have to master for the industry. So the first thing you need to do is get a way of being able to read RMS levels inside of Ableton. And you can't do that with just the Ableton meters. These are peak meters only. They don't show you RMS levels, so I recommend this little plugin here called Simple RMS Meter. It's a free download available at maxforlive.com, or just Google Simple RMS Meter, Max for Live. And you can see here that right now our RMS levels are between -20 and -15, more or less. And I like to master to anywhere between -10 and -8. I wouldn't go above -8 RMS. That's pretty harsh already. A lot of mastering engineers don't even like to go that high. But in the techno world, -8 RMS is pretty good, pretty standard. I mean, I get stuff, I've seen tracks mastered at like -3, -4. At that point, the track loses its dynamics, loses its life, and doesn't sound as good as something that's maybe quieter, but has a lot more dynamics. So, just going in here, finding the limiter, keeping an eye. As you see, I pump the limiter up, and I know it's a little bit too much the bass, so there we go. So now we're at -10 right here on the meters. As you can see, I'm barely hitting 3 dB of gain reduction. I don't want the look ahead all the way up. And it's smart to keep the ceiling at just below 0 dBFS, because a lot of A to D converters or D to A converters will clip if they actually hit 0. So -3 and -4 usually. I like to do it at -4. This also allows for inter-sample peaks to get caught and not actually clip the D to A converter. Taking a listen to our unprocessed version and bringing up the gain to match. You can hear that the processed version is much fuller. It has body and weight to it. Here's our unprocessed version. Sounding a little hollow, not as full encompassing as you would like, but that's alright. It's got the mastered version here. And we make sure we take a listen throughout the track.
Basic types of music indigenous to this country are